right, we're going to call this meeting to order. Start off by calling a roll. Hey, you want to call a roll? Might as well. Who's here?
Council President Lyda, Council Pro Tem Posey, Councilmember Sweeney,
Here.
Councilmember Driver, Councilmember Murphy,
Here.
Councilmember Middlebrooks, Councilmember McClinton.
Here.
All right. So the purpose of this meeting is a community meeting. Steve Scarborough, we just went over his name multiple times, so I hope I did not impact his last name. It's close enough. I'm going to get it right. On behalf of the residents of Inverness Center Drive, having some questions about a particular development. So I'll turn it over to our colleague, Dr. Middlebrooks, to offer any type of feedback and just kind of the order of the meeting and the purpose of it as well, too.
Oh, yeah, look, this was, is this on? No. This was initiated through an email from the residents of Inverness Center Drive, like Councilor Murphy said. It's a good opportunity to have a town hall meeting and for elected officials directly have a conversation with affected residents of the area, hear from you. It's a great opportunity to honestly build some trust between citizens and government. As elected officials, we always enjoy the opportunity to have a more interactive process. Council meetings are a business meeting and can be very restrictive to that. Town hall meetings are much more less structured, informal, and gives us a good opportunity to have those conversations as needed. So, Mr. Scarborough, you initiated this. We open the floor to residents that want to speak.
And I have to say this one item. I'm on, I'm back. You can hear me? Everyone, okay. Other colleagues did let us know they had other obligations at the same time. Two of them, I think, have a business meeting, and Kurt has a family matter he has to attend to, and he told us early, so I did want to make sure I make that statement.
Well, thank you very much for having us in. This all came about there on Inverness Center Drive. You know, we have traffic concerns. We have traffic concerns today, and we're concerned about the additional traffic that this brings in, because if you live in the area, you know that the easiest way to where we are is down Inverness Center Drive, whether you're coming in from Chelsea or coming in from Birmingham. And so we have 4 neighborhoods, 2 of which are age controlled. Of course, the Danbury, the big houses they call it, and then the Danbury cottages. They do have a pedestrian control, but these intersections are uncontrolled. And the increased traffic, we're concerned about the safety in our community. And I guess I'd like to bring up Gary Kitchens. Gary represents the Danbury cottages.
Could you turn on the slides that we sent you?
Do we need these? Okay, let's see here.
For the first one, next one. For the next one. Basically, all 4 of the residential communities along Inverness Center Drive are on the same page. My name's Gary Kitchen. I've been a resident of Danbury Cottages for 8 years, 84 years old, and I've watched the traffic increase considerably since we've been there over the 8 years. Now, we know originally when Inverness Center Drive was started back in the 70s, it was intended to be a commercial property all along that way. In fact, Danbury Cottages is in a location now where there originally was scheduled to have an office building that did not quite materialize. But what did materialize is 4 vibrant communities of residents living along that road. 2 of those communities, Danbury and Inverness, with 250 residents retired, over the age of 80, and Danbury Cottages, 48 cottages that were purchased by individuals. It says on the next slide, if you'll hit that, that the residents in Danbury Cottages are over 70 years of age, and that was done out of kindness. I think there was a couple ladies decided that they didn't want to say their exact age, but the reality is that we are over 80 on an average in that community. Everyone at the big house, as it's called, saved their money, worked hard, and decided that they wanted to retire there in this nice community, windy road, a lot of shrubs, beautiful walkway, with about 4 or 5 blind spots if you're driving through and you're trying to get out. The people in Danbury Cottages felt the very same way. It says it's an over 55 community, but if you're 55 years old and you're driving through Danbury Cottages, you're looking for your parents' house. So of the 4 communities, 2 of them are average over 80. These people, you don't like to talk about it much, but I've been there 8 years. And when I moved in, there have been 28 home changes in that length of time. The majority of those people have either passed away or moved over to the big house. This is where the elderly go in their final spot, where most of them are thinking. A lot of times they overpay for the cottages and they're not too worried about it because they know it's going to be their children's problem when they pass away. So as you set up and you set the, quote, BJ's in motion, and you have an exit there, that exit is probably going to increase the traffic flow to the point where most 80-plus-year-old folks will be extremely concerned about their safety and their peace of mind in this pleasant 4-community home site. Now, I know it started out to be a commercial property, but it didn't happen. It became residential. And now we're saying we're going to make it commercial because that's what it is. But the people living in those 2 over 80 average age communities went to these communities because it was peaceful, it was enjoyable, it was a nice place to be. And if that exit is allowed out of BJ's, in or out, that will no longer be that way. Now, you've done a good job, I think, putting exits and entrances on 280 and on the other street. We don't need that here. We're not trying to fight them from going in. What we're trying to say is we want to live with it, but we can live with that if that exit is eliminated for BJ's. That's all we're really asking. But if you look at most of the studies that's being done, the traffic on 280 would probably choose, and we're seeing that. We're watching people come up from 459, and if they're going down Valleydale, they'll cut in on our street to go down Valleydale. They're doing the same thing when they're coming from Chelsea. They'll turn on us and go back up to Valleydale. It's easier for them.
I apologize. What interest are you referring to? Yeah, point to what interest, so I'll be clear. What interest are you referring to, so I'll be just.
The one that's on the Inverness Center Drive.
Okay,
exit.
got you, okay.
That's the exit we're talking about, where you see those 4 red dots along the line.
Yes.
Those are blind spots.
Right.
Along the way. If most of the people in our cottages and in the big house, you will see people walking at all times in those areas.
Okay.
and all of a sudden you're going to start seeing more and more traffic. And I have had a minimal amount of experience in my lifetime with truckers. And whatever your signs say doesn't really matter when they're trying to make a delivery and get on somewhere else. They're going to go to the point of least resistance. That's the point the trucker's going to go on, and they will be on that street. And so will a lot of people going in and out of that parking lot. What we as residents would like to see is the city council decide, along with everything, they've got enough entrances and exits off of the other two streets, to eliminate that one. And I guess my big question to all of you is this. If your parents were living in either one of those two locations, how would you feel about their safety and their security and their peace of mind and their final years of life? Thank you.
Council members, Mayor, thank you. I'm Maddox Casey. I'm a 22-year resident of Hoover. Thank you for what you've done for the city thus far in your service. I know our community continues to thrive, and we appreciate that. Again, to Gary's point tonight, I'll reiterate some of our thoughts. I'm a resident of Lake Heather. I'm a father of 6 kids, aging from age 21 down to 7, and 3 of those kids are driving, 21, 18, and 16. As we talk about this tonight, I'll further reiterate what Gary said. If you look going down 280 East, so on the far right side of the map that you have there, as residents come down, their path to least resistance, as we'll talk about tonight, if the plans stay as they currently stand, will be Inverness Center Drive. In no way will they take the 4 lights that it's going to take. You got to go through the light at MAPCO, you got to go through the light at Regions Bank, you've got to hit the 3rd light at Valledale Road, then take a right and go through 2 more lights if you're heading down 280 East. The easier route, and it will be found out very quickly as this development is being made, will be to come down Inverness Center Drive. To the same respect, if you're heading 280 West, coming back that way, the only way, there's 2 routes in. One is the Michigan turn that currently exists at Regions Bank, which if you've driven that route, it's a pain because you've got to make a U-turn there, sit at that light, and then take another right. So what most folks already do is if they're coming anywhere near our neighborhood, period, or on Valleydale, is they continue down to the MAPCO and take a left, which means from east and from west on 280, we will pile all of the traffic for BJ's on Inverness Center Drive. It is currently a 4-lane road, which means traffic goes pretty quickly across there. There are 5 blind spots already illustrated on this map. The only way residents come out of Lake Heather, I'll specifically speak for Lake Heather, is to cross the 2 lanes and sit in the median and wait for the remaining 4 other 2 lanes to go. So what I'm concerned about, and the reason I'm here as a father of 6, I have plenty to do tonight, believe me, is I'm concerned about my 16-year-old pulling out of a neighborhood across 2 lanes with all the traffic being dumped on it. We believe that that can be alleviated by the turn, and it's at the corner right there of this, about where that A is on the API. There's a curb cut that is currently scheduled. We believe if that curb cut would be eliminated from the plan, we could coexist in more harmony. At the same time, what I didn't mention is that the traffic coming out of BJ's will continue to pass by Danbury as well, because if you're coming out, you're gonna take, and you wanna go 280 West toward the Summit or toward downtown. Are you gonna come out in front on Valleydale and take that light and the light at 280 and then 2 more lights? Never. You're gonna take a right out. So we're dumping in traffic and out traffic on already what is somewhat of a congested 4-lane highway. So I ask you as council members serving our citizens, in an interest of my kids and our community, that we eliminate the cut. What would you do if you're 16-year-old and your kids walking down the neighborhood sidewalks, if you lived in this community? What would you do? And that's my only request, singular request, and why I'm here tonight. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Could we have someone from the city talk about the current traffic plan for this project? And
Do we have imagery? We have imagery at all for the suggestion?
We do not. No, we can do it off of this, that's fine.
Okay, all right.
For what we're proposing. So what we're hearing, and I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, what we're hearing is that should that access point into the new development from Inverness Center Drive, if that access point were eliminated, then that solves the issue and we can coexist and we can move forward. Is that?
It minimizes it.
It minimizes it. Sure, I understood. But from what I'm hearing and what I've heard is that if that access goes away, then there can be harmony.
Makes it far more palatable.
Understood. Understood. Okay. So in order to do that, there are several things that need to happen. So first off, we would have to study what traffic does at or on Inverness Center Drive and what it does on Valleydale Road if that access point were eliminated. Once that study comes back, then that'll give us a little bit clearer direction on what the impacts are. But we cannot, as Hoover, we cannot unilaterally make that decision because it directly affects Valleydale Road, which is County Road 17, owned and operated and maintained by Shelby County. So they would have to work in collaboration with Shelby County. If they reviewed the traffic study and were comfortable with it, if we reviewed the traffic study and we were comfortable with it, then that would be something that we could entertain at that point. What we're prepared to do as the city is we are prepared to order this traffic study, pay for this traffic study. We don't feel that it's fair for us to put that cost and that extra burden on the developer at this point because it's something that we are asking for. Order the traffic study, have that traffic study come in, review that traffic study, and that would be our steps.
So Blake, just to be clear, prior to coming here, you served at LDOT, was it LDOT?
Yes, sir.
In transportation?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm assuming Skipper is going to be the consultant?
I would recommend Skipper.
Yeah, I would
Sure.
too.
They're
Yeah.
well renowned. Sure.
Has he given you estimated time on how long that would take?
I think I would feel more comfortable if we did new traffic counts as well.
Okay,
So if we're looking at traffic counts, then we would want to take schools into account,
right.
school traffic into account. So you're looking late August, early September before you could do the counts. And then you're probably looking at 2 months to do the actual report, 2 to 3 months,
So we're talking about probably October, November-ish final report?
I think at earliest, before we could review it.
Do we have a traffic study already conducted on ICD, what the traffic will be with this proposed, with the curb already in there?
Yes, based off of the current design, yes, there is a traffic study, but this is a wrinkle, I'll call it a wrinkle, in our caveat to that traffic study. So that traffic study was done with that access in place. So taking that out changes the traffic pattern, so we would have to study that to see what that does.
Will that new traffic study address ICD and Valleydale Road together?
It would address, what do you mean by that?
Inverness Center Drive, will it show pre and post curb cut for Inverness Center Drive?
Yes, in that area, just in that section.
So Blake, can they take the study, again, I'm not a traffic engineer, and interpolate it? Can they interpolate it with the data they already have? Because if the data's done within, 5 years or so, and still has some validity?
I think your window's a little bit shorter than 5 years.
It is.
It is.
Okay.
So just so that everybody's more comfortable, I would recommend doing a new
A brand
traffic
new one.
counts.
Yeah, yeah.
That would be a way to expedite it, if you could take those numbers and add a multiplier to it. But in order to get hard data,
Right, right.
instead of relying on, now, these multipliers are industry standard, and they're
understand.
approved by AlDOT and Transportation Engineering. So that would be that approach. I think to make everybody more comfortable, though, on this one, I think we would order a new traffic study, or a new traffic count.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Yes.
So, just to reiterate, this is not a City of Hoover alone project that would need approval. It would also need to go through Shelby County as well,
That
correct?
is correct.
And just to clarify as well, this project with the current zoning and the current plans for everything is good to go, correct? I mean, this never came before city council for a vote at any point during our tenure on the council, because everything met the current
Well,
zoning.
if you'll remember, there have been several iterations for this project.
Right.
So the developer has been very responsive, has met with the citizens. We've met with the citizens out there as well. So it reduced, the original access was full access. Right out, right in, left in. That has been reduced to what you're seeing today would be a right out, left in, and right in. That makes sense.
As far as Inverness Center Drive goes, the blind spots represented by the red dots up there. I know I spoke with Ken and others, some traffic calming ideas. You know, we tossed out the idea of a traffic circle that would help, but that was not recommended for various reasons. Are there any other, if, just say that the turn on the Inverness Center Drive stays, are there any other traffic calming on Inverness Center Drive that could occur to help alleviate some of these concerns, such as traffic lights or whatever?
We could look at that. I don't know that I'm prepared to give a recommendation tonight on that, but that's something that we could look at. I would caution on traffic circles or roundabouts. They can be very confusing on a two-lane road, and you add multiple lanes to that. It gets very confusing for older drivers, younger drivers, middle-aged drivers. They're very confusing. It's not something that we're accustomed to
Yeah,
in
with
this
the
area.
4-lane, I wouldn't recommend that.
Right. But we run into issues with stop signs as well, just putting a stop sign or a stop control piece. We had to recently take some out just because of the impacts that were on
I'm
that
aware
road.
of that.
Yeah. So it is something that we can't just say, yes, let's put a stop sign here. We need to,
A
there needs to
non-stop
be an
sign, what
official
about-
study.
You know, could traffic lights that would better control
There's-
having a crossover median to turn, especially young. I've got a 16-year-old driver myself, so I totally understand.
There's a warrant analysis that would have to be done for a new signal. So that's all part of that. And if there's other questions about that one, we can get John Anthony up here to talk. But I think we would need to look at that and study that a little bit further if we were going to look at trying to eliminate some of those blind spots or traffic calming on Inverness Center Drive.
Really, I without sounding like it's going to come across the wrong way here, I think, but there's nothing that this council can do to stop this project. That's not within our control. We can't rezone the land. And as Mr. Miller has stated, we have a terrific partnership with Shelby County. You know, we have to continue that partnership as far as the traffic flow goes to this project. But I think we're all committed, council, mayor's office, staff, the developer, the residents. Let's make this the best project that it can be for all concerned, so that, you know, we can touch on some of these issues that you're talking about, and just improve it.
It's,
Can I ask a question, please?
yeah.
Remember, you're dealing with an old guy here, so you guys are talking about studies and things. But let me try to get it straight. You're going to do a study on the traffic flow on Inverness Center Drive, correct? And where else? Valleydale. So if it shows that by eliminating that exit, there puts too much traffic on Valleydale, then you would not be in favor of that, correct?
I can't speak for Shelby County.
Oh, I know, but I'm thinking, why else would you do the study? And then that would then again almost prove our point that there will be more traffic on Inverness Center Drive. If it looks like there's going to be not going to be that much more traffic on Valleydale than Inverness Center Drive, what does that prove to us?
We'd have to find a study to see exactly.
I understand.
what that proves.
Yeah. I liked it better when I was in the military. They usually gave me a yes or a no. But all we're after is trying to eliminate one exit. Now, you made a statement you couldn't do that. So it's not in your power as a city council to vote not to have that exit there. You cannot do that. It's not in your power.
No, sir.
Are you absolutely certain about what you're saying?
We don't have legal here, but I'll refer to Mr. Martin, who's our planner, if you don't mind speaking on that question. But as far as the traffic study, if you're talking about eliminating an exit off of a development, we can't unilaterally do so without having the data to back up our decisions. I understand that the traffic study delays and may not come back with the answer that we want to hear.
Will this traffic study delay the acceptance and beginning of doing work on that facility?
I can't speak to that.
Who can?
Yeah, if we can let Mr. Morton respond, and thank you.
Concerning the access point, in preparation for this particular issue, I did go back and try to find other examples where there may have been restrictions placed on access. And the only ones that I can find where the city, restricted access to a public street is generally related to either master plan developments, part of a plan unit development, where that was a condition placed in the development, or if there was another zoning entitlement that was needed. We have some instances on Highway 150 over the years where there were rezonings that occurred. One that comes to mind is a bit of C2 community commercial property that is adjacent to Paradise Lakes, that particular development. But in that case, the property owner was seeking a new zoning designation. They were seeking a zoning entitlement for that property. And there are instances where conditions were placed on zoning of the property as part of the developer, property owner coming and requesting a change in the zoning status. There was a good bit of conversation and conditions that were worked out to try to deal with potential impacts that new zoning designation and new zoning entitlements would have. In this particular case, it's a bit different. because we are dealing with a piece of property, and the gentleman earlier eloquently stated that it has been zoned for commercial development in the city of Hoover since it was annexed in 1990. This property has been zoned PC Plan Commercial, which allows for a variety of commercial and retail uses, including the ones that have been proposed. Now, we did have a case where the developer came and asked for an additional zoning entitlement that he wasn't allowed to have by right, and that was with the gasoline service. That particular zoning entitlement application, the conditional use application, went before the Planning Commission. And we did have considerable public input at that stage largely against having that component added to this property. And a lot of the same concerns are those being shared tonight. And at that particular time, the Planning Commission denied the application. So it did not even proceed to this body, the council, for consideration. Now, if there was an opportunity there where there was a rezoning or an additional zoning entitlement as a condition of approval of that, there is history where we have had conditions placed that limited access. But to establish that for a property that is currently zoned with a development proposed that is permitted by right with no additional zoning entitlements, I'm just not familiar with a case where access has been completely denied.
So let me just say, so how many rooftops do we have already zoned that can be built remaining? I'm just going somewhere with this so I can make sure I understand. How many rooftops we have left in the city of Hoover that can be built? It's like 10,000?
Ooh,
At least 6.
left on that are entitled that have not
That
been
can,
built.
yeah, yes.
Um,
So let's say 5. I think it's like 5,000 or 6,000 if I'm correct, but we can evaluate that and I can restate the actual number next time. So I do know Hoover, over the last X number of years, you start looking at Ross Bridge, Everly, and all the other properties, regardless if there are just land that have not been any site civil work or any dirt moved on them, if they're already rezoned, if they already have been zoned for X, you don't have flexibility to modify. However, in some cases, as Mr. Martin discussed, some of these properties did not have the foresight to have mixed use, right? 25 years ago, where they wanted commercial there, they wanted stores there. So then they had to come back and ask, well, we want these acreage to be commercial. And correct me, push back on me. And so now it's one of those conversations with this particular council, whatever council's in place. Okay, well, since you're asking for that change, let's talk about the entire PUD, the development, and see if we can make some changes there so you can have that. So I think you're referring to something's already in place that, is not a new development and not changing of a zoning to make other modifications associated with said zoning. Or is that, if I'm wrong, push back on me.
No,
I'm fine with it.
that's accurate. Yeah, and you were right about 6,000 units remain.
Any additional? Yes.
My name is Susan Clark. I live in Inverness. And you're quite right. The Inverness PUD is was built about 50 years ago or more. But I wanted to just point out that there may not be precedent in being able to do something like this, but Hoover has had precedent in the way they've treated this road. Very recently, they have built the sidewalks and a crosswalk between the two Danbury properties to make it safer and better for those residents who are nearby and who are lining that road. So I would just kind of put to you maybe that keeping that in mind, there is precedent for protecting that road and those residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir?
Hey, good evening. My name's Brian Balch, and I apologize if some of my questions have been answered in prior meetings. But my wife and I have been residents of Hoover for all of our 15 years of marriage, property owners for, I believe, 11 of those, and have lived in Beaumont neighborhood for all of the time we've owned property. We've owned 2 houses in that neighborhood. One thing I was curious about is if we claim we can't require the development to block that exit on Inverness Center Drive, why can we require them only to have one entrance on Valleydale Road? Why not 4 or 5? If I were developing this property, a right turn off of Valleydale going west at the far eastern corner of the property would be really attractive, would make that end unit for a restaurant look really good. Somebody somewhere said, no, you can't do that. So what precedent was used there, and why can't it be applied somewhere else? The second thing that I had is I wanted to ask the councilman, how many of you live in an area of Hoover where you commute on 280 every day? Okay, so none of you do. My question revolves, okay, so you do, Mr.
I
Martin?
don't live, but I have to commute on 280 every day.
Okay. Do you enjoy it? Do you think, man, this is the epitome of road design right here?
I'm an engineer, so
Okay.
I'm gonna let you
You
finish.
see a few areas for improvement, right? Okay. So I'm speaking to at least one person who understands. My question on the traffic study is is it Blake? Yes, sir. Okay. When Blake brought up how when we need to include Shelby County for the impact on Valleydale Road, at what point do we bring in the state government or even the federal government, if they're involved, I don't know, on the impact to US 280? Because currently, my biggest concern is when you look at a development like this for a Costco, a Sam's, a BJ's, when I looked around in Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, North Carolina, South Carolina, Louisiana, Mississippi, the furthest away from an interstate highway I could find one of that ilk was the Sam's Club in Hoover, which is not, I think if you look at the area around the Sam's Club, I think that gives you somewhat of an indication of what you can expect for residents around this development. But my question is, have we looked, what's the radius? Do any of you know what the radius was for the traffic study? Because while I agree with, is it Maddox? I agree with Maddox on the impacts to Inverness Center Drive dramatically. I think the bigger problem is going to be felt by everyone who commutes on that road, with hundreds, if not thousands of cars per hour coming down that road. And to speak to egress, even if you go left out of this new development and go east on Valleydale Road toward 280 and turn left, or you come to Valleydale, go west, then turn onto Inverness Center Drive and go. Currently, I would imagine everybody here from my neighborhoods can confirm, more often than not, I'd say half of the days when I leave to go west on 280 toward downtown to my office, I don't get through the first light cycle. And that's at 7:15, 7:30 in the morning, before school traffic and without a litany of new cars from this retail development. So I was curious if you could clarify, number one, the logic used on everywhere we build a development. We don't just make it open curbs or you can turn in wherever. We have situations there. And then secondly, how do we determine the radius of the traffic study? Because I think, and it could be because it's not Hoover, as you go up that road. It's not Shelby County. It's some of Jefferson. It's a hodgepodge. But I think that is the bigger issue not being addressed.
So let me just give you my take. And
Sure.
I think the goal is to have a traffic study to try to have somewhat of a marriage, right? So this is the challenge always. I'll give you an example. And push back on me, Mayor. You was fire marshal about 40 years, so you've seen a lot of development in this area. I know Chief back there. I know a lot of folks here have been here a long time. When a development of tons of acres are developed, is developed with no land and they're set. I'll give you an example. The Hoover Met complex. And then the argument is that neighborhood A comes in and they move there, knowing they moved around the Hoover Met that has tons of development. that can be developed year 10 or year 100, whatever the money. So what we have ran into, then neighborhood B comes in, and neighborhood A say, neighborhood B don't need to be there because it don't cause too much traffic in the area. And then A and B, they gets put in place. And then let's go down the road, I'm trying to play hopscotch. So neighborhood K needs to be developed. So A through whatever is stating that that's problematic because too much. So what occurs is that you have an area that's developed, is already set for whatever the zoning is for and is moved in that particular area. As far as, again, I'm a civil, I'm a hydraulics engineer, water, that's my space, but I've been around a little bit of transportation, but that's not my space. When they're doing designs, they have to do a traffic count. Right now, I want to say 280 goes between like 5 different cities and 2 counties. You can't put a egress in if it's so close to another egress. Deceleration lane has to be a certain type of way. So when they look at that, they have to look at all of those particular items. I don't know if Valladale, Blake, are they rated A through F? Is it rated, is it still, I'm trying to recall. I mean, in generalized and traffic, is it rated A through F, A being the best? So if a particular road is rated, F, then, what occurs is that when they do the study, they'll say this development has to have egress out because we can't make that street that's already F continue to be impacted. So is a lot that goes along with that entire analogy. But I just want to make sure I make that statement. I think the biggest piece we need to do, I do agree with Blake that, doing a traffic count, so at least we'll know, and kind of going from there. But I definitely would like to hear from the developer as well, too, if they would like to talk at all. And from that, so I just want to give my 2 cents on that.
Okay, so the other question, then we don't really have an answer on like what logic is used on, like, for example, on the north corner of the property, we could have put the freight exit right there, right adjacent to Danbury, right adjacent to ICD, and for some reason, somebody said, that's not a good idea, we shouldn't do that. And whether a law stipulates that we have the right to do that or not, someone somewhere had a conversation and came to the realization, you know what, we need to move that away from where it's directly adjacent to where hundreds of elderly people sleep.
If we can let Blake, yeah, thank you so much, sir. So Blake, just something quick in theory, when you're looking at these designs and you have all the parties involved, the studies come in and you go through a list of what can be accepted by Shelby County versus X, right? When they look at this, can you just explain that, just a little bit of the means and methods and the structure from an analysis standpoint?
So, I mean,
And all
really,
of it different, I'm not trying to.
Sure, I'm not a traffic engineer.
Okay.
So that's a little bit different. So I would much rather have
Skipper, yeah.
a skipper here to describe their logic and their process.
Right.
As it relates to the freight, that, from my knowledge, Mac helped me out with this. From my knowledge, that came directly, the modification to the development came directly from Planning Commission's meeting with the residents and when the comments that were based off of that. So there is no truck traffic that would be servicing that development that would be out on Inverness Center Drive. They've got a U-turn that they installed in the back.
I wasn't suggesting there was. I was just illustrating that they didn't put it there for a reason.
And that was a direct relation to the comments received from the citizens.
Okay, so comments can lead to change even though law doesn't require them. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's the point. That's why we're all here tonight about the Inverness Center Drive, is he's just definitively illuminated, hey, this came from conversation and concerns from residents. So it can be changed and altered. And we actually all sat in a meeting where we got told that if in fact that could be done, if the Inverness Center Drive situation could be closed off, we got told by people who worked for the city of Hoover that that wasn't something they could do for us. They had to get on the phone with the developer, and the developer had to agree to it. It was up to the developer. So really now at this point, if we're able to do it, who's in charge of it, and how do we get it done?
Yeah, I still want to go back to, I understand that point on the property, but any egress off, we still need to get Shelby County and other players involved. And I think that's what was being said. I think, again, I don't know how long this project has been going on. I said, but we've received as a city a lot of comments, so they were taken into consideration with the different entities. So I think, again, what Blake is
And
wanting
the
to.
final thing I
If
never
I can-
heard an
if I can-
answer on
if I can
was
finish- If I can, let me
the
finish.
radius of the
Let me-
traffic
Let me
study.
finish for a second. So I think Blake is wanting to do a traffic count, and then we'll go back to the entities. And the goal, again, I want to say this, the goal is to get comments here. I think that's the reason why, from residents. That's the whole goal here. Just like we're prior, so we can take those back to see what we can and cannot. So I just want to make sure we're clear on the goal. The goal is here not to take a vote, to ram it down anyone's throat. That's not the goal here. The goal is to get comments. And I'm going to be real clear. I get it. I mean, in a community, if we did not have our neighbors advocating for certain things, any and everything would go up in a community because no one cares. So I'll be real clear that we want residents like that because we have trash everywhere. Martin wouldn't get tons of emails about folks not cutting their grass and things are being a nuisance. So we rely on residents to be residents and talk about things. So I just want to make sure I'm clear on just the tone and the whole purpose of the meeting.
Sure. And then where could I expect an answer on the radius of this traffic study? Because I feel like anything short of 3 miles in each direction is going to be really short-sighted.
I'd have to get with
It'll
Skipper.
get Skipper.
I'd have to get with Skipper to determine what that looks like.
Do you know offhand what the radius was from the one that was done in prior?
I don't, not
Okay.
offhand, no.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
find
And
that
what,
information, but I-
sir, what's your name, if you don't mind?
Brian Balch.
All right, so-
BAULCH.
Yes, sir. If we can, Blake, all the questions that were discussed today, when we do come back with the study, they individually are addressed based upon the different questions that were asked.
And
I think that'll, Mayor, are you fine with that? Okay,
I'd be happy to have Skipper here presenting that study,
okay,
so they could answer those questions directly.
okay, awesome.
We do have one more speaker.
Yeah, gentlemen, thank you very much. I understand I'm here to make a motion to cancel the project, so. A little bit of humor. So I'm Cody Litton. I recognize a few familiar faces. I'm the executive director at Danbury at Inverness, the retirement community that has been mentioned multiple times here. Obviously, I concur with many of the thoughts and comments here regarding the traffic, and I will not speak to that. I think that's been done, and I would say I'm grateful for your comments and your suggestions thus far of what we can do. I would agree with the statements that, this is likely coming our way. And even as a community, our residents, we want to also find a way to make this work, to cohabitate in such a way that it is beneficial to everyone. I think the other concern that I have, and I think the best way to tell the story is to share a little bit about where I'm from, and I'll be brief. My stomach's growling. I live in Childersburg. I do know how to read and write. So that's Talladega County. A couple of things about that tell just to know about me from being that area. I'm not a very bright man, a little bit of a redneck maybe. It's okay. But the other thing is we're fortunate to have a lot more land in that area. And so I don't have a lot of property where my house sits, but I have enough to where when I sit at my dining room table and look out the doors, I see a nice, beautiful yard where my kids can play, and I have trees behind me. A few weeks ago, I was talking to my wife, and I was telling her about this potential property, and she said, and I'm being transparent, "Really?" Now, by the inflection of her voice, you can tell that she was somewhat excited, because again, we live in Childersburg, and we have a Piggly Wiggly and 12 Mexican restaurants. So we have a membership to Sam's. As was just mentioned, traffic is a nightmare. If we want anything of that nature, it's a hike for us. And so the prospect intrigued her. And as I sat at the dining room table, I said, "Look out the doors and imagine it sits right there." Gentlemen, I don't know where you live. I don't know what your properties look like. I don't know if anyone is really opposed to the idea of more options and more restaurants, more revenue, more jobs. But I think it's how we get there that is so concerning. You know, anytime something like this happens, I just ask the question, who benefits? No one's voting for me. I'm not worried about revenue, but I am worried about my people. And if you can advance the slides, just a few, I believe maybe 3 or 4, you'll see, keep going, one more. That's our property there. So our community sits on about 17 acres. You see the sidewalk there that goes all the way around the building. And I don't know if this is accurate. I didn't put this together, but our property line is very close. Whether it's actually the yellow line, whether it's the tree line, it's right in that area. And so I realize, based on some of the statements, this is not your position or place to say, okay, here's what we're going to do for you, but I recognize the opportunity we have here. I also recognize I'm bringing an emotional element to an analytical problem. We don't make decisions on emotions. But I understand the developers here as well. We want to coexist. I said it to a resident the other day in our town hall, we want to find a way to make lemonade out of lemons. And so I'm here just to ask you, as it was said earlier, if that was your mom's silver Lexus, which it probably is all of your moms, right? And this was her sidewalk, which we market because it goes all the way around our building. It's a half a mile. How would you feel? When you stare out and you see the back of a building and you see compactors and delivery trucks and you hear impact wrenches from maybe a tire center, it has a different feel. They moved to this community to intentionally enjoy peacefully the last season of their life. And all I'm asking is just for consideration. If there is a way that you can support us, all of our neighbors, whether that's through traffic, whether it's a sound barrier, a sound wall, we just wish you'd take that into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any additional questions? You got something? Yeah. I did want to say that the developer did, something? Go ahead, sorry.
I just want to say thank you for listening. The 4 of you guys, the mayor for coming to listen. I want to say thank you for the developer for having a vision to come to Hoover and build something great. I want to give if you'll go back to the slide that showed Inverness, because I want to talk to the city council and to the mayor and the developers, the people who create Inverness. We had a PUD years ago, and the people that administered the PUD, they died, they left the area, and the city was left to take care of that PUD. The integrity of the PUD, if you'll go to that slide, I have benefited from the city not holding to the integrity of the PUD. You guys let Signature Home create the home that I live in. There was a mountain there. It was supposed to be a strip mall. Keep going back.
Mitzi, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
For the record, could you state your name for the clerk?
Yes, Mitzi Aker. I live in Inverness Highlands, the little community there. In fact, we've lived there 20 years. I was pregnant with my first son when we moved there. And I told my husband, I'm like, this is a great property. There's no other houses this close to 280 and within that price range. And then a couple of years later, Beaumont was built. So we're like, okay, we got to wait a few years to get our property value back up. But we love the idea of living near a strip mall. We love the idea of being able to walk to the grocery store. The community really didn't develop as much as we wanted to be walkable. You still, when you're walking across Valleydale, you're taking your life into your own hands. But those houses weren't supposed to be there. Beaumont wasn't supposed to be there. I think Lake Heather was supposed to be there. I don't think Danbury was supposed to be there. I don't think the retirement home was supposed to be there. So I say all that to say the PUD's integrity has been destroyed. So yes, commercial development was supposed to be there, but it was supposed to be where most of those homes are. I just asked you guys to make sure before you start digging, before you start cutting down trees, to make sure the sewer system can withstand the property. We know from the study, I've got the study on my phone if y'all want the traffic study. We know from the traffic study, they're expecting 9,000 cars. That's a lot of flushes a day. So we've got to make sure our infrastructure was not built for our homes. The infrastructure was not built for big box stores. And I would like to encourage you, I'm not saying don't do this one because you can't, but this isn't a big box store. This is a wholesale warehouse. The market, I do marketing for a living. The market isn't the neighborhood. The market isn't Hoover. The market is from Gadsden, where I used to live, to Tuscaloosa, to Auburn. It's a regional market. It's not just a little box store. It is a wholesale warehouse. And we've been in line on the overpass waiting for traffic to pass on Costco. So let this pass, but the next, let's put in a new zoning that calls it what these warehouses are. It's not a wholesale. I mean, it is a wholesale warehouse. You know, Kmart used to be where Kohl's is. I don't know if y'all remember that. That was a big store. I think the road issue, that is the minimum you can do. I think about all the times I've been at Inverness Highland pulling out. I don't see Kohl's traffic coming my way. They stop, they pull in, they get back on 280, they stay on Valleydale. I am concerned when we build out that there's gonna be a lot more traffic on Valleydale, and that infrastructure is not there. You can say we're 4-laning it, but we're not 4-laning it tomorrow. In fact, my friends at the power company are saying it's gonna be years. And we do have the things bought, the properties bought, but my kids will be through Spain Park before we see a 4-lane. So my thoughts to the city council is for all of Hoover, take the integrity of what those communities were meant to be. There's only supposed to be 2 grocery stores in all of Inverness. They had a great vision for Inverness, and I feel like that we're devaluing our communities that we built to be great. And Ken Clark has a whole history book on Inverness, if you want to read it, about how it has changed over the years. And a group of residents took over the lake because they knew that it was being polluted. So we have people that believe in the area, they bought into the area because they bought into a dream. And we want to see great development there. We want to see Mr. Owens develop that into something that we can all be proud to go to, that we can make our kids work at, and that's part of the community. And thank you again for listening, because I know y'all did not have to have this meeting, and thank you for listening.
I think the last thing I'll say, thank you everyone for showing up today. I did want to say thank you to Wendy, our city clerk. When the developer was scheduled to come and give a presentation, we asked Wendy to really try to put out information to ensure individuals knew, not to put it on the agenda for a vote, but to have a lot more transparency to get feedback. We know the developer has made a lot of changes on it, but wanted, since it's coming before the council, to everyone to see it again, right? And thank you, Steve, for, I'm not gonna mess with your last name until I get it right, so Scaro for reaching out to us and bringing me forward. I've known you for a while. To make this happen, thank you so much, Dr. Millbrook as well, too. But if nothing else is being said, meeting is adjourned.